Hello, everyone! Welcome to Tuesday D&D. I am your host, Kay Purcell. I am joined today by a very special last-minute guest who is amazing and agreed to come on because real life, it's picking a fight with David. And, we needed to give David a minute. So, Sophie, hello, welcome!
Hello, hi. How are you?
I am well. Tell us who you are. Tell us as much about as you're comfortable telling us about what you do. Don't have to do it all.
So hi, I'm Sophie. I am the community director at a small team based out of Poland. I'm currently not in Poland, but team is. Yeah, and I've done a few different TTRPG campaigns with Kay, and they've been wonderful. You might recognize me from the God Plane. Hello. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm super excited.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate you so much stepping in last minute. You're the best. So yes, Sophie, find her on Subatomic Mintz on the Twits and Not So Gladiator in chat. Thank you for joining me tonight. Sophie was amazing and played Ozone in the God Plane. But we'll get back to the God Plane in a minute. Hi, I'm Kay. I am Kay Damphir all across the internet, Twitch, Twitter, TikTok, all that good stuff. I host this show every Tuesday. I'm gonna run real quick through some stuff because y'all, I got some stuff going on. So, hi Rex. Y'all are gonna have to bear with me. Sunday, upcoming Sunday is the final episode of Dead Planet. That is a sci-fi horror mothership RPG series. I don't know if any of y'all are caught up on what happened, but I may or may not. I'm still waiting to find out how involved I'm going to be in that final episode. Sunday was a thing. I'm still feeling feels about that. Starting on Monday the 4th, there is going to be on my channel right here at 6 p.m., 5 p.m., 8 p.m. There is going to be 8 p.m. Eastern. There is going to be Strixhaven Fractal Convergence. Steve, who's often hanging out in chat, I think he's here right now, is going to be DMing an awesome series, a homebrew Strixhaven setting 1,000 years in the future. And I'm going to be playing a Himbo Ranger with a baby dragon. And like, that's not a problem at all. It's going to be totally fine. On April 9th at noon Eastern over at Saucefire, I am going... Yes, he's a Drake Warden Ranger. It's going to be great. I'm going to be playing in Mercy Road 3. This is a 24-hour D&D charity stream for Child's Play. Also, my company, Avalanche Studios, has donated 10 Call of the Wild codes to give away. A bunch of other companies have donated. So, come and hang out, donate if you can, hang out and chat, help boost it, and you could win some cool stuff. Yes, there's Steve hanging out in chat. There are 2 more things that are coming up that I can't talk about yet. One, I really can't wait to share, and I've been sitting on for a while, and hopefully soon. But coming up this Thursday, as in like 2 days, there's going to be a thing that I'm going to be part of, and I don't know if I can talk about it yet. I'm waiting for the email to tell me I could do the thing. But there's going to be a charity game that I'm going to be in on Thursday, so before you hit up Critical Role Kaimal, I'll follow me on Twitter, and you can find out what I'll be doing, and it should be cool. Yes, I love charity streams. I'm so excited. Hi, that was a lot. My April schedule's a little bananas. I wouldn't have it any other way. So, tonight, I'm going to stop talking for a second and let my, captions reset. There we go. Told you it was a lot. Tonight, we are discussing characters. Now, the original plan was to dive super deep because David and I both create NPCs as well as player characters. But we're going to do a slight sidestep because real life is kicking David's butt. Everyone go give full rubber ducky some love. Needs it. Sophie, characters.
Yes.
Characters are cool.
I love them. I love one in particular.
So there's this perception, belief in TTRPG that you have to have this massive collection of characters, that you have to be incredibly original, and that like you can never use the same character twice, and you need unique character voices for every single character. And I'm here to say all of that is hooey. But yeah, I'm just gonna say all that is hooey. You can have exactly as many or exactly as few characters as you want. And I wanted to drag in Sophie because Sophie's character Ozone has fulfilled a number of roles over our TTRPG adventures. And beyond.
Yeah.
So, would you like to tell us a little bit about the origins of Ozone?
Sure. So Ozone started out as my character for my first ever playthrough of Dragon Age Inquisition. I made a big, beefy, two-handed warrior Canary, and I was like, I love him. And I made him, you know, flirt with everybody, romance Dorian all the way, loved it. And then it just kind of evolved that I made Ozone my go-to for every RPG that I played. And I would fit him into the constraints of whatever game I was, you know, had a character creator that I could create him in. So for like Final Fantasy XIV, instead of having horns, he's an elf, but he still has similar qualities where he's as big as he can be. He's a two-handed warrior, always a big old axe. I love it. And like similar coloring across the board and however I can. And kind of similar personality. Flirty. And just kind of a little cocky, but he is very, I hope, lovable in his ways. I mean, not in Godplane, but
we saw the soft nougaty center eventually.
You did get to see a little bit of it, but it's been kind of fun to fit him into the things that I'm, you know, whatever I'm doing. Like even in Stardew Valley, how can I put Ozone into Stardew Valley? But he's there. I did it. So
I've had you know, I am the person, I am one of those problem players who has way too many characters. And chat, give us a shout. Are you the person who has like one go-to, or are you the person who has way too many characters? Like, I want to see our ratio here, because I'm one of those people who has way too many. And literally I got to the point where I had like full statted sheets for too many characters, and I was like, well, I guess I need to write my own homebrew game so that all of these characters can be NPCs, or else I'm never going to get to play them. But I've also found, like, so we'll dive into this when David and I, we go super deep into things around character creation. But for me, usually when I'm making a character for D&D, or just kind of playing around with a character concept in general, I'm usually trying to like answer a question of some sort. That's just how I approach the world and storytelling, especially for me with things like TTRPG, because I know I'm going to be super immersed in this character's world and thought. And so some of y'all saw the Team Liquid game that I did with Gabe Hicks. I got to play my Paladin of the Flying Spaghetti Monster there. Big half-orc Paladin of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. And everyone... Too many? You want them all to feel different. Cool, I'm going to get to that. So, for me, like, creating Roxy came out of a conversation about the Heaven's Gate cult.
Ooh.
Because, apparently, I came to learn that there were 2 surviving members of the Heaven's Gate cult. It wasn't that they survived, they were ordered to not commit suicide so that they could continue to send the message of this group. And to this day, they have a Facebook, and you can write into them and request VHS tapes of the propaganda created by the leader. And I've always, like, religion has always been something I've struggled with. I won't go into it here, but so I was wanting to use D&D as a way to kind of be like, how can I cope with this thing that prickles me? And I kind of wanted to deal with this religious isolationism, right? What's the other side of where I am? Where's someone? What is it like to be the only person who believes in a thing? And that's actually kind of hard to do in D&D because gods are real. They walk among us. So I decided the only way you could truly get that in D&D, you can't say my god died because, oh yeah, that sucks. This god also died. It was you had to worship the one god that everyone knew was a joke. So that's where she came out of this. And so I treat, even though it's the flying spaghetti monster, and yes, I quote, hail meat sauce full of beef, blessed is the salt from thy shaker. I end every blessing with ramen, right? Like, I lean into it, but I also treat her religion as very sincere. And that creates a different tone. Steve says he has a ton of characters and he wants them all to feel unique. Sophie, tell me if you're comfortable talking about
Bastion?
Yeah, your
Sure.
mirror. I don't know if I want to call it mirrorverse.
Yeah. Yeah, so I have a little, personal side project where I'm trying to write a book. Why not? We're in a pandemic, everything's wild. I'm deciding to learn a language and write a book because I got time. So when it came to, it was I started around this time last year and I knew that I wanted to have a character that I still felt comfortable with but was relatively new and had, like I said, I've had Ozone for a long time and I like his persona. He's really fun to get myself into, and I knew that I would have fun creating a story with someone that has that similar personality. So out comes Bastion, who is just a human, but he's still big and beefy. He's still a himbo.
Gotta have the eye candy.
Exactly. I love it. I'm weak. And he's a fighter, and but he isn't I took out some of the quirks that Ozone has, like the flirting with everybody and all of that. He is in love with this one person from his childhood, and fate is involved. It's the setting is a world where every god knows about each other and is interacted with each other, and then the world is divided into realms for each of those gods, and they're in the Greek god realm because those are my favorites. I'm a sucker for a Hades and Persephone story. I literally have a tattoo for them. But I am comfortable, embedding myself in there, and it was easy enough to slot Bastion into that and create a relationship to a god, like you're talking about. How, what does he believe in? It's not really it's that type of worship, but yeah, he has little bits of Ozone in him, but he's also this new version where he's hyper feminist. I mean, Ozone was pretty feminist too, but Bastion is women. Women.
Exclamation point.
Women. And he's not as cocky. He's much more toned back, much more laid back, but is very adamant in his beliefs and what he wants to do. But then when this woman, the girl that he's in love with, is involved, he will follow her immediately. And we got a little taste of that with Ozone in the God Plane, because that version of Ozone was in love with only one person. He still flirts with everyone, or he would if he could.
If he still had a heart.
If he still had, yeah, if he hadn't shoved rings against his sternum. Idiot. Kay was mean. Kay.
All I'm saying is, I'm a DM. You gave me ammo.
You did. You really did. But kind of how we treated Ozone in the God Plane is now affecting my storyline with Bastion, where I want to add in these little memory issues, or this kind of like hesitancy, and basically he's losing his memories, and he is like, Bastion is losing his memories because Ares is manipulating him to turn him into the perfect fighter for him. And there's going to be a point where he just doesn't remember the woman that he's been in love with for his entire life, and is going to almost attack her and almost kill her. And that is something that happened with the God Plane. I was like, Kay was fucking evil, and she hurt me so bad, and now I want to do it again.
Like, now I have to work through this trauma.
Yeah, how can I process it? And like, sure, we had a great satisfactory ending with Ozim in the God Plane, and I was glad that you gave me that option, because if I had decided not to, because I was pretty sure I was gonna be like, I'm just gonna let him die. Like, I'm gonna see what he can do and let him basically commit suicide however he feels like doing it, because if he's this miserable, we'll just see what she throws at me, and I'll take the first thing that looks good and see what happens. But
I'm a mean DM. I'm not that mean of a DM.
You're not that mean.
Like, the whole point of, especially, like, to me, the whole point of playing games and doing this emergent storytelling is to give people a story that's meaningful and that matters. And if all you do, like, I warned y'all, God Plane's gonna be a really unhappy place, but I'm leading towards something.
Mm-hmm. I gave you a lot of ammo, though. Like, too much ammo.
Y'all, I told her, she's like, also this, and I'm like, okay, maybe stop. Okay, after 1 or 2 episodes, we're gonna revisit some of this, because it was a lot.
Like, this is too much. Maybe too much.
And also, like, I kept telling you, like, hey, this is the thing that's gonna happen. You're like, oh, this is how it could hurt me. And I'm like, that is my job. Please stop doing it to yourself.
And Kay did it. Kay took what I gave and was like, perfect, delicious, thank you for the meal. I'm going to devour it. And it was worth it. I think it turned out great. I don't know if anyone in here also watched The God Plane, but
I really enjoyed the story. You know, there were some tears, and I'm pleased, right? Is it really a good TTRPG if at least one person is a little misty by the end, right? I mean, yes, it is.
I was definitely about to cry before my internet cut out. That was so well done.
It absolutely is. Not every game has to be heart-wrenching. I'm just being silly. Like, let's be fair. Before we make broad statements. So yes, how do you have characters and make them feel different? Well, I'm gonna talk a little bit about one of my characters who's now 4 different characters.
Have I heard about this character before?
Well, you've heard stories of my himbo bard.
Yes, I have.
My himbo bard actually started out as a very incredibly angsty vampire hunter, potentially half-blood, who talks to the ghost of his father. Bright was very much out of my high school days, and I think there's still comics of Bright up on DeviantArt. Maybe, I'm not sure, I haven't checked. And like, this was this whole story, and very angsty, but like had some good bones. Like, as I grew in storytelling, I'm like, this is a really angsty. Of course, I love edgelords. Like, David makes fun of me. My love of edgelords just like knows no end. Vampire Hunter D, like I'm damn fear because of Vampire Hunter D. And then I kind of got into a space where I was in a space where I could do some collaborative writing with people, and someone wanted to do a relationship line with this character. And wow, how do you take a character that unhappy? Because the end arc of Bright's story up to that point was like, he was the best hunter, but he used technology, and technology wasn't really trusted, so no one trusted him. And it was going to be the whole thing, and he was in love with this girl who's in love with someone else who's got more clout. And at the very end, you know, she was going to choose him, and he was going to walk away. You would have appreciated this story a lot, Sophie.
I would have loved that.
So I was like, how do I take this personality and put them in an established relationship for this arc? And it kind of became like a gothic hippie type thing, like a laid-back hippie who also like really embraced like life and death, and like, yeah, things are dark, but that's the way it is, and that's not all bad. And it kind of, I felt a change in this character, something. Well, from there they became, I had Bright, and then there became Damien, and then off of Damien came Kinley, who's now my himbo bard, who is like Fae lost completely, sometimes wanders in and out of dreams, is just very, very Fae, very detached, very happy. Everything works out. Might be a demigod? Not sure. Kind of really hope he's not a demigod. So there became 3 characters. And there's another incarnation of this character also brewing, which is going to be in one of the things which I'm going to announce. And this is the worst version. This is the mirrorverse of my himbo bard, who's happy and go lucky. This character's going to be a lot. So, and to me, every single one of those characters feels very distinct because they all have different motives. They all have different views. So, how do you make characters who, even 4 characters who came out of the same original character, why are they all different? How do you make them feel unique? Well, first off, for any character in a game, regardless of if they are a player character or if they are a DNPC, ask yourself pretty early on in the process, right? Like, what do they want and what do they need? So, Ozone wanted... Well, let's see. Ozone's need was to be with the woman he wanted. The woman he loves. What he wanted was to not be alive.
Mm-hmm. Because she was dead.
Those 2 things aren't the same, even though it seems like they are. So, one of my characters, who's going to be an NPC in Wayheart, which is my original campaign that I'm working on, Kat is a captain of the guard, and she is a human, like, in her, like, early mid-50s, mohawk, cigar, was part of the army, grew up in this little trade town, wanted to go see the world, went and traveled the world, what did she want? She wanted to be a hero. She wanted to do good. She wanted to be a defender of people. Got out and saw all that the army was doing and went, oh no, this is not what I signed up for. This is not protecting people. This is not making the world a better place. So she ended her commission. Hey! Hey, Youngles!
Hello!
What's up, Jen? She ended her commission, came back to the tiny town, discovered there's some political stuff, and said, oh no, screw both these places trying to influence this. This is my home. I am now building a militia. I am defending all of this. So what did she want? She wanted to go be a soldier, but what did she need? She needed to defend people. She needed to do the good thing. So what a character wants and needs are not always the same. And what can make an NPC incredibly interesting in a campaign is if what they want and or need is close to but not in line with what the party wants. That's how you build this sense of they can help me, but I shouldn't necessarily trust them, but that doesn't mean they're the big bad. I did this a little bit with Mistcat. You all knew Mistcat wanted stuff from you. You didn't exactly know why. Mistcat assured you that it wasn't going to be anything too terrible for you. But without spoiling the end of the God Plane, we saw what those years of heroes aligning with the Mistcat resulted with in the end. And no, it didn't affect you all. Mistcat did nothing but help you all. And make fun of Ozone.
Yeah. poor boy just suffered the whole time till the end. I
Look,
guess.
you kept insisting all of these things, and I'm like,
know.
um,
You kind of did the same with the tower campaign. You had the who was it? That was so long ago already.
So, Skyfall Tower is a one-shot that I've run a couple times. And we had the Artificer and we had the Portrait.
I think Ozone didn't trust either of them. Very in line.
I feel like Ozone has some trust issues in my games.
If you hadn't fucked us over so badly with the heist...
I'm getting ready to run
different.
that as a 2-part game, by the way. I'm gonna bring in some folks and do it as a 2-part, so you have more time to, mess around in the... I'm rewriting a bunch of that, though.
It was so fun, but, like, all my trust issues stem from that.
So yeah, talking a little bit about... So, Steve has asked, a little bit, how do I make my characters feel different? For me, a lot of it, especially... if you're only doing it as a DM, is... So number one, if you're building a character as a DM for an NPC for people to interact with, the party is going to do a lot to dictate what this character is. Like, there are some that you definitely, like, can hard plan, but, like, when I was coming up with Kat, and when I'm like, what can make her... I knew I wanted her to be a human. I didn't know I wanted her to be human. I knew I wanted her to be a woman, and I wanted her to have a huge ass hammer. I wanted her to have a war hammer as big as her, right? With the mohawk and the cigar, yes. Like this, she's got like she's clearly been, this whole time, like this is absolutely the person you want to follow into battle, because she's like, fuck the politicians. Not following the political stuff. This is our town. We're going to protect it. I'm like, yes. Yes, her. Like that, I wanted that. But also, like, it's... Okay, yes, we know that's a typical tough girl, right? What can I do? So I spent a lot of time going, like, should she be a dwarf? Because that makes sense with a giant hammer. Should she be a tiefling? Because that could be hilarious if her horns were, like, way longer. So it's like, she's, like, 4'8", but she's 5'2" with the horns. Like, that could have been fun. And eventually, after a whole lot of going back and forth, I'm like, no, I just want her to be a woman. Just a human, normal-ass woman who's just like, no, every single thing I've done, I have earned. All of this, I worked for it, baby. You're like, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And sometimes, sometimes the quirk really makes it. I hadn't planned for Miss Cat to be a hairless cat, but Cassandra's artwork of it was hairless, because my idea was like, Miss Cat would look hairless, but then mist would be encompassing his body, and like, if the mist would kind of dissipate, but then immediately reform. And after I saw Cassandra's artwork, I'm like, oh no, the hairless cat is perfect for this. In that case, the quirk helped make that character so memorable. But sometimes not having a quirk really does it. Mm-hmm. Sophie, can you maybe explain or articulate how you felt? Like, was there a process you went through in differentiating Ozone from Bastion, or was there like a moment of like, I need to keep this but not this, and how do I keep them distinct in my brain? Did you go through that process?
I guess the second I was like, Bastion is gonna be a human, kind of like, how you're talking, I just want him to be human. That's it. He just surprisingly grew kind of tall. Like, and he's worked really hard to do what he does. Like, I think with the difference with Ozone is that, yes, Bastion exists in a world where there's still magic, whereas Ozone will utilize some of that magic as, a barbarian, where he goes into a rage, or he'll, use one of his little tiefling abilities. Bastion is just like, I have no magic, and his whole thing is that he isn't accepting any favor from Ares to become more powerful. Like, he has just worked exceptionally hard to become one of the best fighters in the realm. And he consistently beats the people who have those power boosts that gods have given them. And so to really kind of differentiate those two, where it's like the rage component is still kind of there, where like Bastion utilizes rage in the sense where when he's fighting, that is all he's thinking about, is like, how am I angry enough to do this? And then it kind of plays more into the backstory, like his whole backstory with the woman that he's in love with, is that he was taken from her, like ripped away from her when he was 12, and he has only thought about her and hoping that she's okay for his entire life. And now he's 27, still has no idea if she's okay or not. Whereas with Ozone, it's like, okay, for the tower, for the heist, he's just this funny, quirky guy, big fucking tiefling, to suddenly play Ozone as a rogue for the heist, where I'm like, this boy is 7'5", like,
It was great. It was great. Like, how you gonna fit there with those horns?
and then Kay would have to consciously be like, he can fit through the doorway, I guess. Like, he's fun, you know, making you think about that is kind of funny. So they're pretty easy to distinguish in that sense, where like they're removed enough at this point where I don't have to worry about being like, oh, this is way too Ozone versus, oh, this is more Bastion, because Bastion wasn't really playing a factor into like the God Plane or the tower, and definitely not. I think the heist happened before I even started writing this book. It's true, I did pass a stealth check. It was great.
It was a Kronk moment.
And there was a few other really golden moments during that was just like, this shouldn't happen. Yeah.
Also say, like, sometimes having characters who have similarities aren't bad at all, because they will really help you get to the core of a thing. So for a home game with Stephanie, who was a guest earlier on, she's running a Ravnica game, and I'm playing, So here's the thing. When people let me be weird in a game, I get to do really fun things. Steve let me play my T-Fork. Half Tiefling, half Orc. Yes. Himbo, half Tiefling, half Orc, with a baby dragon. That was a time. Stephanie let me play an original species. I got to play a vegetation genasi. So I got to play a plant person who'd been in hibernation for 2,000 years. And I had developed this character and this voice where I'm like, they are a plant and they do not speak this language natively. So like creepy, like 1,000-yard stare with the smile, because they communicate chemically, right? They bud, or their flowers move, or they release chemicals to show that they're happy. So I had already developed this like very distinct creature. And then I was asked to join the mothership, and Kai happened. I wanted to play, like, everyone was kind of picking, and I was like, well, let me play the Phil character. What? Because there's only 4 classes, and I'm like, let me do the 4th class. And they're like, oh, we can double up. I'm like, no, let me do the 4th class, whatever it is. And it ended up being an android. And I'm like, okay, well, if I'm going to play an android, right, I want to go super creepy Uncanny Valley. And it turned out that when we within, my plant person's voice was perfect for Kai, who is a very hopeful but very creepy android. And so for me, you know, that's, how are they the same? Well, I mean, a plant person and an android are pretty different. You're not going to confuse the two. The voice is the same. It was a very easy way for me to use those. It was a shortcut. You know, I had already practiced the voice in the home game. They're very different in their motivations. Kai is 100% devoted to their crew and keeping Nyx, their creator, alive. Whereas When We Then is a Grave Domain cleric, and their god has been forgotten. So they are trying to revive this entire religion, because and wild places, because Ravnica is, you know, a giant city. This is a plant person who suddenly wakes up in a city that's the size of a planet. And so, and Wyn's values are very different. Now, the reason I bring this up is because Sunday is the last episode of Godplane, and I am really, really, really going to miss playing Kai, and there's some dramatic things that may or may not happen. But whatever happens, I'm a little bit more okay with that happening. Do you know why? Because I still get to play Win in my home game, and I don't have to say goodbye. Like, a part of this character, even as radically different as they may be, still gets to live on. That name is still a mouthful. Yes. Win Wi Ythin. That is Welsh, and it means branch. No, vine. Vine. Yeah, so making characters original, or making characters memorable, especially as in the NPC seat, find something that makes them stand out. So when it came to the portrait in Skyhold Tower, you know, that was a module that I didn't write. I purchased and ran with some modifications. Because we needed more lady types. All the NPCs were guys except for the one which cast a spell at you in the beginning, and I was like, nope, we gonna fix this. But they gave me a summary of like the character in the portrait is like a little high strung and has all of the intelligence, or all of the hot but none of the intelligence of the original, right? So I just ended up like, and the more the players reacted to that, the more crotchety this character became. And if everyone had just been like I ran a different session where one of the characters was a wizard and was like, oh my goodness, I've heard of you, you're amazing, and was just like, and in that case, well, he became very dignified and very, whoa. So worry less about, is there a quirk, is there a voice that I need in order to make this character memorable, and more worry about the character themselves. There's always a super easy, and look, I'm gonna say this, and I think Sophie knows this very well. The party will never latch on to the character you think they're going to latch onto. You will build out this whole amazing NPC and be like, ah, and then they'll be like, that guy in the corner. Who that? And you're like, that's Steve. This is the character. And they're like, yeah, hi, Steve. Tell us about Steve. We like Steve. Tell me about Steve. And then you're like, Steve, ladies and gentlemen. Well, Steve is now the coolest character in the world. Yeah, worry less about how do I make this character memorable and distinct. Find a thing, especially if you can tie it to their motivation. So like, Kat, as my example, wants to protect people, wants to do the right thing. The fact that she is wanting to do the right thing by fighting and is like a 5'0" woman with a warhammer, that makes her pretty memorable without going into super details about all this other stuff. You know, I have Roxy, my half-orc paladin of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. I say that phrase, and everyone's like, excuse me, what? And honestly, a paladin of the Flying Spaghetti Monster can and often is a very two-dimensional, like, flat joke character. And if all you focus on is I have to come up with a hook of why this character is amazing, they're gonna often end up being a little bit flat, a little bit two-dimensional, because you don't have that need, that thing that makes them interesting. Steve, I don't know if that answered your question. Chat, do you have any other, like, hit us up? Other questions about characters, adaptations, taking your characters beyond TTRPG. You know, you talked a little bit, Sophie, about how some things from Godplane have now crept into your actual story.
How dare you? How dare you?
I didn't know that was gonna happen. Did I do that?
I didn't either. I didn't know it was gonna happen either.
And that is part of the reason we play improv games and we play TTRPGs, is like, you hit on a thing and you're like, oh, I didn't know I needed to dissect that. Mm-hmm. And that's always a terrifying moment.
What's nice, though, with Godplane and kind of fleshing out the story between Ozim and Lyra is that it really helped with like solidifying how I wanted to approach Bastion's love interest, because I'm basically telling the story from both of their perspectives. Her name's Ophelia, and getting to really focus on the stuff for Godplane helped a lot with how do I want to approach Ophelia, what type of personality do I want her to have, because she's pretty similar to Lyra, but I kind of took what Lyra was and just went full throttle and was like, this is like, I'm going to eat your ass alive if you look at me wrong, and I know that I can kick your ass, so don't even try it. Like, I can see it on your face that you're thinking about it, and I'm just gonna laugh at you as you fall face flat in the dirt. Like, and Bastion is just like, I love it. And I kind of wanted to really flip a lot of gender norms where, because I've been reading a lot during the pandemic, and I'm getting so sick of certain tropes that a lot of like high fantasy writers are using in books that have a romance component, where I'm just like immediately drawn out of it, and I'm like, how can I approach something where I don't have to deal with that type of garbage that I'm so tired of at this point? But back to Ozim and who we're focusing on, like, the thing that makes them interesting, I guess what was nice with Ozim is that he does, like, it's really just how I feel like acting as him. And since we wanted to talk about Willie, I think what made Ozim so memorable was Willie, like, on the God plane.
So real quick, because not everyone watched, and that's totally cool. Godplane was a horror series I ran, and it was pretty intense. So if you can't do horror, please don't watch it. It was very intense. I was so fortunate to get to pull together some amazing people. Jen Youngle's in chat, Sophie here, D'Angelo Morello, who's putting out Emerald Templars. Please go check out Emerald Templars. It's about to hit Kickstarter. It's his original setting. It's amazing. And my good friend, Cassandra, who Cassandra had played like a couple sessions, but had never completed a D&D game. Also, David, my usual co-mod, co-DM'd for me and helped me put all that together. It wouldn't have happened without David.
You're both menaces.
Look, I was worse because like the snake thing, the snakes in the grave thing, I like woke up at 3 a.m. I'm like, hey David, what if we do this? And he's like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, why? And he's all like, because that's some really dark stuff. Are you okay? Do you need to talk? And I'm like, no, is that like, would that be scary? Is that creepy? And he's like, what? How did you come to? I'm like, I don't know. I was half asleep at 3 a.m. and I got this visual, and should we put it in? And he's like, I don't want to say yes, but we should probably put it in. But Cassandra was super new to the TTRPG space, and talking about characters just came in with this character and this performance and this dedication to, I'm paying attention to what everyone else is saying, and I'm gonna pull that stuff in later when you least expect it. And rolling with the punches. Also, I'm gonna say this, I don't know if Cassandra at the end was like, by the way, if Willie dies, I'm fine with it.
Wow. Really?
She was like, I don't know where this story is going, but if we reach a point and Willie needs to die, do it if it's for the story.
Wow. Ooh.
Yeah. So that final boss fight, when there was like deals being made, that was very powerful.
Wow.
There is nothing, y'all, as a DM, when a player has faith in you, when a player's like, do what you will, if it's for a good story. Because that's the thing, I spent a lot of time working with my... I think I work hard with my... I did keep Godplane players more in the dark with less communication than I usually do, because it was horror, and like... But I felt out some things, and I fished, and I dropped ideas of like, would this be okay? Normally I'm much more communicative than I was in the back end of Godplane, but it was horror, you know. But like, when you have built up that trust with a player, and the player's like, hey, if it's for a story, do what you must. You know, it's really cool. And that's one thing I will mention, and I've said this before, but we're talking about building characters. I always build my characters with holes or unanswered questions for plot hooks that the DM can choose to use or not. Because I'm going to be honest, like, I got a character coming up for a thing that I can't talk about yet, but they're going to be starting at level 6. A lot of background there. Coming into an already established campaign. So a lot of background there too. And like, I think my just the pure history part of it was 8 or 9 pages of like, this is what this character did. Largely because I'm like, hey, they did all this, and then I did like an appendix at the end for my DM. So I'm like, you don't have to reference all this. I needed to write this out for me to get to know this character. But like, I did a little TLDR and plot hooks, right? And I'm like, here's a brief of their history. Here are all the major characters for them. Here are various plot points. What can I talk about here? Brandon in Strixhaven that we're about to play, I left a big hole in his background around how and when he met his dragon. That I won't say if it was used or not, but that was a thing that I gave to my DM of like, here, this is what it is. In my home game, which David runs, where I play Roxy, I don't know if the flying spaghetti monster is real or not. I don't know if Roxy has completely made, because 5e allows you can be absolutely bananas off your rocker and just be so committed to something that isn't real that you are manifesting your own divine powers on behalf of a not real entity. I don't know if she's worshiping a different god, she's just mistaken like who it is and is like, yes, James, or like, I'm Jim. Yes, I do this in the name of James. I'm Jim. Like, that could also be happening. I don't know. And I haven't asked David, I've specifically forbidden David from telling me. So I personally like to do that because when you give a DM that freedom, they tend to just take your story and wrench you into it so tightly. That's what happened with Ozone, right? I was like, give me a little bit of background, and you're like, here's all of these things that tied in perfectly with the nightmare. And I was like, well, I can't not make this related to the nightmare. And then you're like, and here's how we make it worse. And here's how we make it worse. Oh, and here's the powers that he uses. And I'm like, well, all that's coming directly from this source, and you're going to be mad at me. But also, it's too perfect.
It was perfect. But like I was saying, I think if we didn't have Willie, Ozone would not have been as fun of a character. Like, so many of the great moments that we had on Godplane was because of their dynamic. Because you even said before we started, you're like, I don't know how either you and Rook are gonna get along or how you and Willie are gonna get along. And that was like, I mean, we got great things out of both of them, especially with Rook.
The fanfic. Oh my goodness, the fanfic.
The bromance, the fanfic, the what's your workout routine.
Oh my goodness, burpees.
For a horror campaign, we had some really wonderful moments of comedy that, you know, testament to the players and to the characters that they brought to the table. But I really think that Willie was such a standout in this sweet naivete, just in the fact that Cassandra hadn't really played D&D before, and so that like either there were moments where she hesitated, but then there was moments where like other players might have hesitated because they're like, oh, I've done this before, I should wait. Whereas Cassandra's like, go! Like, I'm gonna go poke the thing, and everyone else that's played before is like, don't poke the thing. Poking the thing is never the right option. And then, you know, you have a situation where Cassandra was literally like, what, 1 dice roll away from having her soul swapped with a thing? Like,
oh my goodness. That was really stressful as a DM.
That was great, though. But then, you know, the fact that we didn't know that at the time, and then you came in afterwards and it was like, oh, you, by the skin of your teeth, avoided a really horrible thing. And just the fact that Willie was just so gung-ho about this, despite the horrible circumstances that the party was in, and just like annoying Ozone to no end, where he's like, are you fucking kidding me? But it was great and wonderful, and it, you know, made me think about, oh, how would I want to play if I play Ozone again?
Mm-hmm.
What type of iteration would I want to have on him for the next thing? Like, is he going to be more like Willie? Will he be more like Rook? Or am I going to suddenly play a brand new character and try my own version of Willie out? Because I loved that. So that was great.
And I think that's something that, especially new players get really hung up about, like, I have to play the perfect character. Not just, I need to have a really good build. Like, my build has to be, like, you don't have to min-max, and you also don't have to play a perfect character. You have to play a genuine character. If you are so caught up in, I have to roleplay accurately, my character is eloquent, so therefore I have to deliver the big eloquent speech, you're going to be so caught up in that you're not going to deliver the moment. And that, I think, is the how do you make a memorable character? How do you contribute to the game? How do you make sure that people really care about your character? Well, you do it by being in the moment. This is an improv trick too, about they spend a lot of time in improv, and like improv, especially two people on the stage, there's a lot of pressure of like, that person's going to finish talking and then you have to start talking. But if you were in your head about what you're going to say next, you were not listening to what the other person is going to say. And that is, I mean, this is a weird, if I humble brag about myself, one of the things I do really well is I pay attention when other people are talking. And I'm like, oh, 3 sessions ago you mentioned that you like flowers, so suddenly my character's showing up with flowers. And they're like, I never told your character that. No, but your character mentioned it while mine was standing around. I didn't call it out, I just acted on it. And that was one thing that whole dynamic was so great, especially between Willie and all of these other characters, was like, was part of why Willie was so standout, was Willie was so paying attention. And Cassandra told me, like, she was like, I wanted to deliver a good performance, so she went and watched like the episode with Molly Mock on Critical Role, and if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. And like, she went and watched like some of the top tier performers and was like, oh, that's what they do, I'm gonna go imitate it. So even without watching all of Critical Role, Cassandra has not watched all of Critical Role, even without taking improv classes, she hasn't taken improv classes, even without years or months or weeks of TTRPG experience, she came in and delivered just a breakout performance because she went, oh, I've got the basics, I'm just going to put my heart and soul into it. I'm going to be completely present during the game. And look, especially in home games, you don't have to be completely present the entire game. For a lot of people, especially if you are not neurotypical, it is impossible to be completely present the entire game. But if you can find some time of, I'm not talking, but someone else is, let me take that and then try to find a way to reference it later. Just doing that practice one or two times a session is going to make you such a better player, so much more fun to play with, and I promise you your DM is going to start throwing you more and more juicy details and bones because they know you'll carry it through. Because at the start of that campaign, I actually gave Cassandra a whole bunch of lore about, like, this is a rumor that about what happened in old days, old-timey history in your world. And it turned out that history... And Cassandra didn't know that. I had someone who was watching, Kato, was actually like, oh, it's really cool how you did that. And I'm like, yeah, I was really hoping the players would, like, figure that out. He's like, wait, they didn't know? Like, no, I didn't tell them. I was a mean DM.
I think that was the one downside to Ozone, is that he was so self-centered that it was like I didn't really get to play those nice moments where I could things more, because he was just, that was not this version of Ozone.
Yeah.
And so I think I relied a lot more on Willie doing, so it was like,
but Welcome, People's Ascension. Thank you for the follow. Let me know if I could talk about the thing. But yeah, and I think that's the other, which I distracted myself. I'm very rambly tonight, y'all. It's Tuesday and it's been a week. Having the perfect character, there is, especially in a party setting, there's no such thing as the perfect character. You know, because Ozone came in with lore, and Ozone was like, Ozone reacted differently than Willie, but I could see that you as a player were paying a lot of attention to all the things that everyone was doing. And even though you, like, it wasn't in your character to start these mushy moments, and you definitely had lines of like, my character won't talk about this until it's time. But anytime Willie was reaching for something, Ozone was aware.
Yeah, and it gave way to that one moment, especially with the Willie's friend, which I think was like very much a turning point for me with how I wanted to play Ozone. Was like, I think I've been way too much of an asshole.
That huddle between Ozone and Nabi about like, what do we do about this, was like,
don't tell her.
It was a moment, like, because I kind of, and I'm not gonna, so as a DM, I had a moment, I had a panic of like, am I not making it clear what's happening? And you all confirmed in that moment, because Cassandra is so good and so dedicated to that role. I'm like, am I not making it clear? Oh no, what if I'm not a good storyteller? Oh no, it's not. Oh no, they know. She's, ooh, this hurts more now.
Yeah, you're a great storyteller. That's the thing, is that you're phenomenal. And sometimes there's just moments where, as a player, I was like, I so badly want to do this justice. Like, we knew how much heart and soul you had poured into Godplane. And there was just like, even though I'd come in as prepared as I could, given you as much as I could, I was like, I hope I can play this version of my boy the way that, like, I want to do Cade justice with him. Because you'd seen him before, and you had gotten, you know, great little glimpses of him, where it's like, okay, he's fun. Haha, himbo. But this was like, no, this is very serious, sad, suicidal boy. And like, that's even, I was like, I don't know if I can play that well. Like, how am I gonna do this?
And then like, you all, everyone in the campaign came with so much dedication to the characters and to the story that it made me want to like, no, I don't want to make this easy, but like, I wanted to give everyone an out, a glimmer of hope. And even if you didn't know it was coming, right? I wanted to make you face that terrible thing, but everything in those trials foreshadowed what I was going to offer you all at the end. Because I had decided what I was going to offer you all at the end, way before we got to the house. Within, like, before we started the first session, I had at least a good idea for everyone. David has said in chat, and I'm going to read it because it's absolutely true, one of the things I've always loved about the players' K-casts and the players I've been fortunate to play with is how engaged they've all been. Every single person we've played with and who is DM'd with K has questions and additional info to make the games better. And like, and look, I can only speak for myself as a storyteller and myself as a player. This is not true of all DMs, but if you come to me with a character or a couple hooks or like, this character is important to my character, I really want to honor that. And that's why I was so terrified of doing that scene with Lyra. And like, I knew you'd be mad at me, but I was also
Which
terrified.
Scene? The one in the house with the...
I was actually less worried about that one, but the one at the end, where I was quoting your exact words back at you.
Ooh.
I can't believe I got in and out of that dock without you noticing.
You bamboozled me real good.
I thought you had to have seen that one coming.
No.
But I was really proud of that moment. I'm like, I'm gonna get her. She's gonna know exactly where this is. But like, I feel a responsibility as a storyteller of like, yes, I've built this story and I've built this world, but like, that's just an outline, right? That's just a structure. I've made a dollhouse. I've made a stage, and my players are the ones filling it, and I want to honor all the characters, all the story, all the background, all the emotion that you all are bringing. So, I'm sorry to anyone who hasn't seen Godplane, but Godplane is what we're talking about this time, apparently. I'm sure next...
literally did put a dollhouse in Godplane.
I did. And then I was very proud. The big dollhouse was a last-minute addition of what are we going to put here? I was going to have it just be cliffs, and I'm like, no, it needs to be something weird. Dollhouses are creepy. And then later I'm like, David, we're putting the dollhouse in the house. They're going to see the dollhouse in house.
So good.
Yeah, there's a tweet going around about explain your DM style with a GIF, and for me, and David will confirm. It's like from Family Guy, which I generally don't like Family Guy, but this is like where he's like, he pulls the pin in a grenade, throws it out the window. That could work. Like, that was literally how these scariest moments of Godplane were written that way. Yes, there's no one right way to DM. Different DMs have different styles and different storytelling. And, I don't know that we're a mutual, Sophie, but one of my friends, and I won't name them because this might sound like shade, and I don't mean any shade at all, but they are a much, much more old school style DM. And they are a wonderful DM and a wonderful storyteller. They don't like me playing in their games. Because they are from a much, when I say old school, I'm not talking 3.5, I'm talking 3 era of D&D, of you show up, not at the tavern, you show up outside the cave, and you go in, and for this person, you come in with a character class, an alignment, and an idea of kind of what you want their personality to be, and then you collectively as a group all decide who and what your characters are as you go through this adventure together. So you wouldn't, they don't want me to come in with 8 pages of backstory. They want me to come in saying, like, I'm playing this class, this race, I use this kind of weapon, I'm pretty untrustworthy. And then we figure out the rest of it as a group, which is a completely legitimate playstyle. And it's why a lot of people who are from older eras of D&D, of Pathfinder, of tabletop gaming, are frustrated with, the Critical Role era, because it's so much more character-driven. And there's absolutely space. Like, character-driven makes for much better streaming watch. It just does. No one wants to watch you sit around and do math. Not no one. Some people do want to watch you sit around and do math. And I'm going to say, B. Dave Walters ran a level 20 charity game, one-shot, where Brennan Lee Mulligan played a Harrigan who did 9 attacks on its first turn and did over 840 points of damage. And it was glorious, right? But everyone at the table was there for that, and they were there for a one-shot. Now, that style of emergent party storytelling is also very entertaining if done right. The trick is, that is incredibly improv, incredibly reliant on the group, and much more difficult to do than for some people. Todd from who is producing and starring in the Dead Planet Mothership game, is much more of that, like, I've got a basic character idea and I'm going to fill out the character as I go. Whereas I came in, I'm like, so there's no wrong way, but knowing exactly what you want and knowing what you do and don't like playing with is also incredibly important, because I kind of like, I like sitting down and going, oh, you're playing this character, I'm playing this character, can we mush, is there a backstory? Can we, like, have a tie? But I also like, oh, you seem untrustworthy and I don't know anything about you. We're gonna have fun with that as we go.
And I kind of like that you had us do that for Godplane, where you're like, you cannot have connections to any of these people. Like, don't talk to anybody really about anything going in. Whereas with, like, the tower, when I came in with Shannon's character, and we just have this ridiculous dynamic duo happening, which was really fun. and I enjoyed getting to try something like that out. I kind of liked not having a connection to anybody and getting to establish those.
But that was also
establish them.
God Plane was 8 parts, 10 parts. I don't even remember anymore. I think it was 10. I think we decided it was eight episodes worth of content, so we did it for 10 because roleplay. But Tower was a one-shot, so we didn't have time to go as deep and establish those relationships. David says, Sophie, can we get a glimpse into characters you're excited to play in the future? Not that we might have a module or two in mind.
I mean, Kay knows that I will absolutely, if you like Ozone, I will fit him into whatever constraints you need him to have, and I will play Ozone however you want. But I guess for future characters, I always gravitate towards playing a meat shield. Like, in any RPG that I play, I will always want to be a heavy hitter. Like, I don't know why. I just...
Gotta bring the deeps.
Yeah, I don't like ranged combat. I'm not really that into magic and being in the background. But I feel like I should try to break out of that and see how I feel in more of like a D&D setting rather than an RPG setting.
Play a hybrid class. Like play like a paladin, where you get to do some magic and some boomy boom, and you can heal people, and you're, you know.
Yeah, and I kind of liked that we had a bartificer. And I was like, okay, so dual class. Because then I was sitting there and I was like, I should have dual classed Ozone. How fun would that have been? Like, and then I was sitting there like, God damn it, Kay. I didn't know I could do this because I'm still relatively new to TTRPGs as well. So I've only ever played one-shots ahead of the God Plane. And they've all been with Ozone.
Fighter Barbarian dual class is a heck of a drug. Yay, People's Ascension says, yay, I can talk about the thing. This coming Thursday, I'm going to be in a Cyberpunk Red charity game. So at that point, well, it's not, I'll have one more episode with Kai, but androids will potentially still rule. Yeah, so many different GM styles out there, especially with spanning old school, new school divide. Something out there for every type of player. And, you know, I've said this a million times, and I'm going to continue saying it a million times. Play the game you want to play. I have really good friends who I'm like, I actually don't want to play D&D with you because I like you, but your play style, you know, you like games that are way crunchier than I want to handle. Or I don't feel like you share the spotlight well. Like, for me, sharing the spotlight is a really, really big deal. And it's harder for some people than others. And I'm fine playing them in a home game, but I don't want to bring them on a stream game because I know I'm going to have to be like, wait, hold on, let someone else do a thing. And some of y'all have seen some of my bigger personality characters. I have characters who want to be the first to react to everything. And there is a certain skill that you have to develop to be like, oh, I want to react to this, but I need to let someone else. Or like, I feel like there should be a bigger reaction to what just happened than there was. So instead of my taking the big reaction, I'm going to look and go, hey, Bard, did you see that? And those sometimes give the biggest reactions, because then a person who maybe they were a little shy, or maybe they, for whatever reason, were intimidated, or gives them a reason to step up and take the spotlight, and they feel like they've been given permission. And man, that little pull up can make all the difference to someone in a game. And always remember, be kind, because you never know what other people are going through.
And I think like with that hand, I think what was so great about Cassandra is that Willie gave that opening to everybody for every opportunity that was available, because Willie was the one to react. And like playing someone who...
Ozone was so cool, like so jaded and stoic, and like Rook was also like, you know, a little PTSD shell-shocked, so he wasn't always going to react. Nabi was often, you know, like, I'm going to internal monologue this. You know, and it took that character going, you, what do you think? You, how are you going to react? And, you know, we had a talk before Godplane where I said, like, I would really like, this is a horror game, don't be nothing but funny, right? Like, keep out of character jokes on, but like, let's try to keep seriousness. But if we hadn't had Willie, who, she wasn't even being funny all the time, she was just being a lot, but it would have been a very different game. It would not have been as good without her giving you all the openings.
Yeah, because the reactiveness, because like Ozone was not going to react to the things that were happening unless it specifically involved very particular components of his backstory. And like, even then, I was limiting the amount of things that he was going to actively respond to. It had to be like either A, B, or C. And aside from that, he didn't care. But he did care about how Willie was reacting to things. Because if Willie went off the deep end, Ozone was just like, calm down. Yeah. You are too much. You gotta stop. And so having that was kind of nice, because I was worried that I was gonna milk those moments where Ozone was going to react. I was worried that I was worried about taking the spotlight in those times. I was like, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to only have Ozone talk at these times. And then aside from that, he's just like...
And like, Willie put in the work on Ozone too. Because Willie wore Ozone down to get Ozone to tell her things. Like, she put in the work and she got that nougaty center.
My sweet mushy boy. I love him so much.
And I'm also going to say, David made a good point. It's important to remember that even crunchy systems, crunchy number-heavy mid-max games can be very character-focused as well. A good example is Vampire the Masquerade. Super lore-heavy, very crunchy, but also extremely character-focused. And without
I
spoil...
wish we got to do the Phoenix by Night one that D'Angelo was going to do. Oh, I still want to do that.
Did I tell you who I was going to play? If we get to play that,
bit, yeah.
Hi, I'm Zarek. I'm Zarek Doolander, and I'm here to talk about the Mass Queer Aid. We need to help queers, because if we don't, who will aid them? Yeah, they were gonna let me play a comedy Vampire Masquerade, and that's probably the worst idea.
Spectacular.
But no, I'm actually getting ready to get into a series with a rather crunchy system, and it's going to be really interesting to see how that crunchy system goes. But it's definitely, I mean, it's me. It's going to be character focused. I'm also going to say that sometimes a dice roll can make... Sometimes systems can be a little too creamy. There are some moments in the Godplane in Mothership module, where I'm like, you know, that's very rolls light, and it's just like, talk out what you're gonna do and then tell me what you're gonna do. And I'm like, can I just like roll a perception to see if I see a thing, right? Like, it would be nice to know, like, sometimes just rolling a dice can actually speed things along.
Like the 6 nat ones in a row I had in Tower.
Oh, that was amazing.
It was incredible.
It was
Get
amazing.
Your character to whip their own ass. It's
3 times.
Guaranteed a great time.
3 times. But yeah. So, to recap, because I feel like we're probably winding down. Unless there's any other questions from chat, please feel free to talk. But when it comes to building a character, my personal advice would be, you know, come up with the basics of who is this character, and then, you know, get a feel for, are they a magic user, a fighter, what class, you know, that basic stuff. And then ask yourself, regardless of if you're building an NPC or a player character, what do they want versus what do they need? And do your best to make sure those two things aren't the same, because that's going to give your character a lot more depth and interest. Don't get too hung up on a quirk. Figure out a quick explanation of them, but especially if you're a DM, be prepared that things are going to... your players are not going to focus on the character you want them to focus on, and the best way to make your character memorable is just to make them interesting. to make them feel genuine and not one-dimensional. If all you've got is a pirate saying yar, like everyone's gonna be like, yeah, the freaking pirate that said yar at me, like.
That's the character I want to play in the module, David. I'm just gonna play a pirate that says yar. There you go. But also, I will play in any module you want me to play in, please. Thank you.
in the home game with Stephanie, she has a pirate who, like, oh my goodness, they are an amazing Thembian, and they have a hook hand, but it's actually just a hook that they're holding on to, and they have the biggest hat, and we, like, ended up going to a burlesque, and they came, and, like, we ended up going to a burlesque, and there were, like, feathers and glitter everywhere because it was exotic birds. And then we ran into the pirate, then, like, we went to their place the next day, and the pirate was covered in feathers and glitter. And we're like, you were at the burlesque! They're like, of course, I have a box at the burlesque! And I'm like, this is the best pirate ever. Right? It wasn't about that the pirate had a hook hand. It was that the pirate was this flamboyant and unapologetic about it. And I love this pirate so much now. Pirate NPCs are usually, like, actually very awesome. Yes, I love Stardust so much. Don't be afraid to let characters branch out and change. And again, how do I make sure I'm not just cloning this character? Well, start asking yourself, what do they want? What do they need? How are they different? Often things that happen in one setting might change that character in another setting. And again, that's not necessarily bad. Usually I find, as a not psychologist, I am not a psychologist. This is just me with my own personal, like, army of characters in my head. Normally, if, like, something happens and, like, the character's like, I'm fine, I'm gonna carry on, but it's like, but now I'm the mirrorverse of this character and I'm obsessed with this, that usually means I've got something I need to work out and something I want to reflect, and maybe chasing that down isn't bad. If you really, especially as a player, if you really want to make your characters memorable, really do your best to pay attention to what's going on with the other characters in your game, and find moments to show that you're paying attention, to draw them into the conversation, to show that their story is important to you as well. And the more everyone does that, gosh, a table gets so good. That story is so good when that happens. Any other thoughts, Sophie? Anything I missed? Chat, anything I missed?
I don't know, like, kind of branching out the people that you're playing with. So, like, I've played with Jen twice, Godplane and Tower, and then aside from that, everyone was new for me. And so it was kind of nice having, aside from you, because you've been my DM for so many things now, but, like, getting out of your comfort zone in the sense where you have to acclimate to new people. I don't have a favorite Pokemon. Oh, this throws me for a loop.
This is my favorite Pokemon.
It's good. Oh. David, why did you do this to me? I don't know. What was I saying before that? Oh, like, getting out of your comfort zone. Like, I want, as much as I love playing Ozone, like, I know that he can probably get a little repetitive, yeah, trying to figure out how to branch him out, and why I liked Godplane so much was that it was this really cold version that I was afraid to approach. I was like, oh god, it feels bad to have to treat this character this way because I have never treated him like this. And oh no, what did you like? I worry. I'm looking. Oh no. No.
It's just a big angry beat him with a metal bar Ozone. That's all. That's your favorite Pokemon.
Beat him with a metal bar.
Beat him with a metal bar. Beat him with an I-beam. But yeah, branching out is really great. And like, sometimes even if I've been in a game where I'm like, oh, I'm not sure this is clicking. Like, oh, I'm not sure. Like, I've got cool lore, and my lore is actually required to move this story forward, and no one is. Sometimes reaching out of character and just being like, hey, are you fit? Like, I spend so much time checking in on other players and being like, hey, are you okay? Like, hey, my himbo bard, it's a little bit fey, and a thing happened where he went full angry fey and threw a freaking fit, and was basically feral. And I reached out to everyone, and I'm like, Kinley is not mad at this character, right? And making sure that everyone knows that they can approach you. Not everyone's going to. But sometimes people are also like, hey, I've got a thing I've been trying to do and I don't know how to fit it in.
And
Very
I think
good point.
What made like our after sessions of God Planes so important was that we got to the fact that you built those in, where we discussed what happened and kind of got to do those check-ins with each other, even if it wasn't like something that big happened, but kind of getting to be like, you know, Ozone is not upset with you. He doesn't hate you.
Yeah. Citrons wants to know, how do you deal with in-character interactions affecting at-table moods relationships? Okay. I'm going to talk really quick because I've had Sophie here for a while. But this is a really good question, because it has to do with a term that I think is very misunderstood, which is called bleed. And this is like character bleed. Your character did a thing. Your character had a fight, and it's now impacting you as the player or other players. And it is often, bleed is often spoken about as if it's a very bad thing. And to an extent, yes, you don't want character bleed, right? When Ozone and Rook went toe-to-toe and like had a growl fest, like, I needed you as players to be like, we're okay out of character. In the job, or in Holly Jolly Highsmiths, when I set up certain tense social interactions between characters, when characters have, you know, rival or unequal motives, and that can be dangerous because you don't want two people, especially if it's an ongoing campaign, to really dislike the other person and feel like the other person is out to get them or their character. I am gonna take the super spicy stance of saying I don't think all or even most bleed is bad. I play D&D or tabletop RPGs for bleed. I play specifically, so when I finish a game, I'm gonna be like, oh my god, this just happened. I am still a little messed up over what happened Sunday night on Dead Planet. Like, I can still feel that emotion, like, pricking at the back of my eyes occasionally. I wouldn't have it any other way. I want that kind of bleed. I want the kind of bleed where we beat this big bad guy, and you did that awesome thing, and I did the fun, you did... That's why I play these games. So I don't think bleed is bad. How do you make sure that it's the right kind of bleed that's happening? Because I had very real concerns at Godplane that, you know, what if these characters really don't like each other? I'm being careful, Jen. I'm trying to not spoil things. I apparently already spoiled. I didn't realize someone watched a thing and they were like, hey, like, can you do this thing? And I'm like, yeah, just had this thing happen Sunday. Let's see if we can do it again. And they're like, wait, that happened? What happened with that? But I'm like, oh, no, you watched that? Why are you watching? Thank you for watching that. I didn't know. I'm sorry. So, make sure you watch Dead Planet by Todd Moon Bounce. Yes. So, really... the best. I know, I didn't know. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I don't expect people to watch my stuff. I really genuinely don't. Anyhow, focusing. Answering the question. I mean, the answer is communication. That is not always the only answer. I'm going to rehash a story I've told here a couple times, because sometimes the answer is, what is actually the motivation behind this? And the answer is going to be removing one of those people. I was in a game where David is gonna not enjoy reliving this. I was in a game where one of the players did not like me personally. And it was very clear that this player did not like me personally. And I'm a big girl. I'm an adult. Not everyone has to like me. I don't care. You don't have to like all of my characters. Some of my characters are really annoying, and if your character doesn't like my character, that's fine. If you think my character's annoying, that's fine. I will tone it down to your, around your character. I won't subject you to what the annoying elements of that character. This person was using in-character, very thinly veiled in-character insults to come after me. Yes, technically, most of what he said was in character, but it was also very clearly aimed at me. And it was also being said before and after streams. So, it was very obvious that it was me, and my DM was not stepping in. But again, it wasn't... And this is, again, we've talked a lot about intersectionality and creating safe spaces and being hyper-aware as a DM. The DM was not being hyper-aware. I also knew that if I spoke up before things blew up, I was going to be I was being sensitive. No, he didn't mean it that way. I knew that was going to be the case. So I waited because I knew that this person was eventually going to have enough rope to hang themselves. And he did. And it was, we'll say, dramatic how this came to a head. So, again, the answer of that wasn't, the problem there, if you were not paying attention, was these two characters don't like each other, and it's causing problems for the players. That was not what was actually going on. The problem was one person did not like me, was not being an adult and dealing with it, was rerouting all of their dislike for me to my character. I was not interacting and not changing any of my behavior because I knew what was happening, and I know not to feed a troll because I come from the internet. So usually it's just communication. Sophie will confirm the amount of time I spent encouraging all of you to reach out to each other. Check in. Is everyone okay? Is there a thing? Reach out to me if there's a thing. I will be a bridge, right? And unfortunately, it's not always that simple because it's not always a case of, all we have to do is talk it out, because sometimes people are jerks and they will deliberately not talk it out. Sophie, I feel like even if you haven't experienced this in TTRPG, you've experienced in community spaces.
Yeah.
Anything to add? Any thoughts around that?
No. I think you hit it on the head. But like I was saying, I think the fact that you built in those opportunities for us to talk things out if we needed to,
Mm-hmm.
and that you were so clear about wanting us to do that, I think it really helped everything. I don't think we ever had any issues at all with Godplane, and since we knew going into it that things were going to be difficult, and setting up all of those here, what are you okay with? What are you not okay with? Let's make sure everyone is on the same page as to these are the things that are green lit. If this isn't good, you have to tell me and we'll back out.
Mm-hmm.
And just you making that so abundantly clear, that it was still going to be a safe space, even though we were going to touch on hard things, was so important to, I think, the success that was Godplane, and how we got to have these incredible character moments where sometimes it might have seemed contentious or that two characters were butting heads, but it was never the players who were doing it. It was we know that this is what's going to help the story and what's so important to moving this forward, or just to create ambiance and conflict and tension, and and then to reconvene afterwards and be like, D'Angelo, that was great. I was so glad you played along with it. I'm glad that we got to do that. And never to a point where it was what is wrong with you? How could you do something like this?
Right.
And you know, same with Willie, where a lot of the stuff with Willie could have potentially been something where it's like, Cassandra, this is obnoxious, like, you have to stop. It never got to that point. Like, we were able to say thank you for doing that, for helping us with setting up this scene, or for, you know, that scene may not have landed as hard as if you weren't there to, you know, react the way that you reacted, or, you know, miss the thing that you missed, mostly being the friend. And that was really spectacular, I think.
And I did get to watch you all, like, learn and adjust and start learning how to signal in character that you were giving each other permission to do a thing, or, like, there was that, like, and it's funny because you can't, you know, we were playing via Zoom, so you couldn't, like, make eye contact, right? But there was still that, like, I saw the two people, like, we doing this? Yeah, we doing this. And then you'd go in, and it was so fun to watch that evolve.
Yeah.
Quick comments. People's Ascension says, I've had the exact same experience. It was a terrible thing, except the GM never stood up. I had to walk away. Sometimes, for your own well-being, you might have to be the one to walk away. There's always a better group or game out there. Yeah, my DM did not step up. I had to, after the person went on a sexist rant on a sponsored stream, I had to say, you need to fix that, and it's either that person or me. I will never play with that person again. So don't be afraid to advocate. I stayed. That person did not. And yes, David says, as a player, you have to advocate for yourself, especially if that means walking away. There are safe spaces, and there are safe spaces that are not safe. And a lot of spaces that are not safe think that they're safe. They genuinely think that they're safe, but they don't understand what that actually means. And find people who will value you enough to make sure that when you have a concern, it is honored and respected and taken care of.
And you were so good about that.
I tried. And I actually think that, and a lot of this comes out of, like, the zero session, the, like, these are the lines and veils, these are the things, and I say that even for fluffy games. You shouldn't, and again, I don't know the situation that spawned the question of what do you do about this, but a lot of times when I see it, it's because, you know, certain people are in a game, it's a casual game, it's a home game, it's a weekly session, it's fine and normal, it's not horror, and they haven't had a zero session. And all of a sudden, you know, it's usually a conflict of what players want, and everyone's not meshing. You came into Godplay knowing it was going to be exploration, roleplay, horror, right? A lot of times, people can come in to a situation, and, like, I come into a game and I'm like, even if it's crunchy, so long as there's, like, roleplay, I'm happy, I'm here to play a character. And if I'm in with someone who's all like, my character's motivation is whatever moves the plot forward, let me roll some dice and kill some things. You can balance that, but it's much more difficult, especially if in that mix you've got someone who's all like, I just want to min-max, so we need to talk about your character's build. Your build is suboptimal, and that and again, it can even be within a group of people who all want the same thing. We are all role players. Cool. Well, then you find out this one player wants to role play, like, a big part of their backstory is something I'm uncomfortable with. A big part of their backstory is, you know, there is I want to word this carefully, so as to not be, like, insensitive, but there are some people who, like, there is a chronic magical illness that resembles a real world illness that I have dealt with in my life or through a family member, and this makes me very uncomfortable. And the person says, like, well, it's fantasy. It's not X disease, it's magical disease. And knowing that sort of thing going in is very important. That's why in Godplane, we had a section almost as long as what is going to be in the game as what isn't going to be in the game, because you need to know, you don't need to worry about torture methods. So, I don't know your life, but we're at a wartime. Maybe we don't want to talk about torture methods right now.
Yeah, it was just Ozone. did torture people in terrible ways. But that's it. We don't need to.
Yeah,
But
we
I think
didn't
what
lean
was-
into that. That was referenced, but not there.
What was also great though is that you applied it. The fact that we were streaming the campaign, you applied those checks and balances that we had set up in our 0 session for just with each other. Is that you also actively applied it in the stream. Whereas like I think if we hadn't been streaming this, I think we could have potentially gone even deeper with some of those things. Or like you had to cut the scene with Ozone and Lyra in the house because you're like, I don't think people will want to watch this. And I think that was a really smart thing where it's like I was ready to keep going and push it as far as possible to really lean into the horror side of things. But you as a DM acted in a really great way where you're like
Like the point, we've had a talk. I don't remember if it was on the stream or elsewhere, but like I have some issues with Curse of Strahd. Curse of Strahd as a module has some issues, and like one of my issues is not that. Like one of the topics that it deals with, the primary topic it deals with, is again not something. I'm not saying you should never deal with this topic of horror, but like it feels like a topic of horror that could have been handled at a 3 and they turned it to an 11. And it was like, we have pushed this far enough where like an audience, like, and of course in the moment, I know for you especially in the moment, you were like, I'm here, I'm committed, I'm going down this rabbit hole. But what it feels like as a player isn't always what it feels like as an audience. And me as a DM, I'm like, I've got it. Everyone's got what's happening. Everyone understands the commitment. I don't think we need to chase this further because we all understand and we can move it forward and continue the story with not just the horror, but some of the recovery, right? I wanted to tell a horror story that wasn't just trauma, that also dealt with healing from that trauma, seeing the fallout and moving on. Not all horror games have to do that. That's just the game I ran.
And it was great. It was so good.
I ripped your heart out. I hope I put a little band-aid on it, at least.
You did. You did. You made me think about it. You made me contemplate accepting your band-aid, which was really fun. It was also just kind of like a fun exercise in character exploration and like figuring out just how far someone was really willing to go. Because like I thought I was willing to go far farther than we ended up going, like with the graveyard scene where it was like he could have gone in this very different path because which you thought was going to happen was that he was just going to be like ha smash, and I went in pivoted and was like, trauma, I'm gonna respect you.
And it was
I get it. Like,
that was great. That was a moment where we learned a lot about Ozone. And I really wouldn't have had that played out any other way.
Yeah, exactly. And like just getting that opportunity where even if that wasn't what you were expecting, just this way to flesh out a character in a way that I haven't gotten to explore before was really special, I think. And kind of realizing that you didn't anticipate that at all either and getting to catch you off guard. I was like, I left the session like, ooh.
This is why we play TTRPGs and don't write books, right? Like, I can write a book, and sometimes I do surprise myself, which is a whole conversation. But like, no, it's emergent storytelling is great. And I have definitely, I know I have had moments in Mothership where I did a thing or I came to a conclusion and Richard was like, okay. And like, Citrines, did we answer your question adequately? I know I sometimes ramble and I want to make sure we did the thing. David says, what Kay and I were really proud of with Godplane was the coverage of what happens when characters have to reflect and choose the direction of healing. So yeah, and I am so proud of the story that we collectively told in Godplane, because I set up a structure and I hoped that you all were going to jump into it and embrace it and like chase it down, because Ozone didn't have to open up.
I held out as long as I could. I really did. And that Willy broke me.
Did it. And Rook.
Yeah.
And Rook and his...
Oh, God.
Spiders and undead and everything are spooky, but a lot of the fear the characters encounters was looking inside and looking into their past. And man, did you guys rise to it. Did you all rise to it? I'm sorry, I'm trying to use less gendered language. You all rose to it. It was amazing. So thank you, Sophie, for joining me tonight. Thank you for playing in God Plane and all these other things. Thank you, chat, for hanging out. Citrains, thank you for People's Ascension. Thank you for coming by. David, thank you for spending your time, even though you've had a heck of a day. I hope this helped you unwind. Jen, thank you for being here. You're always here. You're amazing. This was a little bit lighter episode than the past few, but you know, we didn't need to talk about the slap. I didn't want to have to try to figure out how to shoehorn the slap into TTRPG. Could have been done. We didn't need to do it. And I think that's gonna wrap it up for this week. I am Kay. I've been your host. This is Sophie, the amazing subatomic Mintz, not so gladiator herself.
Wow. And goodbye. This was great. I was glad to be able to talk about my boy, because whatever has stemmed. And I hope that I get to play with you more soon, because it's always delightful. I love you, I love you, David. I love you, Jen. I love you, chat. I may not know you, but I love you.
Anything else you would like to plug? I know your schedule's fairly light right now, but
It's pretty light right now.
Okay. Cool.
I don't know. No. It was our game's second launch anniversary this past weekend, so
Congrats!
we have stuff planned for the future that I can't talk about, which is exciting, but
Yes.
this was great. It was wonderful to hang out with you again. And yeah.
It was great seeing you. Plugging Sophie's cute face. Yes. Yes. And Am is not the only one in this chat agreeing to that.
Oh no. Oh right, everyone after all the God Plane stuff. That was funny. It was a good confidence booster.
I'm Kay. I've been your host at KDamnFear across the internet. It's up there in the corner. Sunday, the series finale of Dead Planet. I don't know how much of you I'll see there. We'll find out. Yay, emergent storytelling. Monday, April 4th, every Monday in April is Strixhaven Fractal Convergence right here at 8 p.m. And we will be playing homebrew Strixhaven setting 1,000 years in the future. And I've got a himbo with a baby dragon. So like, that'll be cool. I'll be painted green. Yeah. Every Tuesday right here, Tuesday D. You've been here. Saturday, April 9th is Mercy Road 3, the Yule Tree Caper, and that is going to be an actual play for benefiting Child's Play. Lots of giveaways and lots of amazing people. I get to play with Brian Gray, Urban Bohemian, one of my favorite TTRPG performers. Losing my mind a little bit. That's going to be noon Eastern, Saturday, April 9th at Saucefire, Saucefire. And Thursday, this coming Thursday, I will be, heard it here first, I will be so lucky to play in a charity game for Cyberpunk Red. I don't know what I'm playing yet, but I'm gonna bust out my official Cyberpunk jacket that I got at E3, because, you know, you gotta flex when you can. That's gonna wrap this up. My cat is starting to scream at me, so I have to go humor him before it gets worse. Chat, thank you so much. Thank you for chatting. This was a little bit more chill of an episode than the past few we've had, but I really enjoyed it. Sophie, thank you for stepping in last minute.
Of course.
You are a saint. We'll be back next Tuesday, and I can't wait to see you then. I'm going to see who we're going to raid over to, and you all have a really great day. I look forward to seeing you next week.